Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another video. Today I'm here to talk to you about a game I've been very excited to talk about. It's namely Grim Dawn, which you can also see in the title. This is a very complicated game to talk about, not because it's hard or difficult to understand how it works or what the basics are, but because there's gonna be a lot of features in this game, a lot of stuff in the skill trees and a lot of stuff in the finite details that I'm gonna miss. And if you are a fan of the game, I apologize in advance, but see this video as a short but sweet way to get to know the basics and get to know if you might want to buy this game. So what kind of game are we talking about here? Grim Dawn is basically a hack and slash dungeon crawler in the style of Diablo or Path of Exile. And it does share a lot of similarities with those kinds of games. Some people might even call it a Diablo clone when they first look at it, and that's fair to a certain extent because it does share many of the same features. But I think it deserves a second look beyond just saying it's just a clone, let's just leave it at that and not play it, because it's actually very enjoyable to play, and that's what I hope to actually convey to you throughout this video. I kinda understand the mentality though, because when I first saw it, I wasn't actually sure whether or not I wanted to buy it, because it just seemed like another one of those games you'd seen a million times. And to a certain extent it is, but there's something to say when a game does something simple so well that it actually becomes enjoyable that you shouldn't really ignore, in my opinion. It's worth taking a look at, it's worth playing, and it's definitely not a bad game. All that being said, let's talk about what the game actually has to offer. When you start at Grim Dawn, you'll be asked to create a character. There's not really many options here, you can either be male or female, but the cosmetic option you pick here doesn't really do much throughout the game. Even your name is not used at all throughout the story, and the starting story doesn't change depending on what gender you choose. So this entire thing is basically just cosmetic, and it's basically just choosing what kind of character you want to look at throughout the game. There's no race options, meaning you can't pick like a centaur, and there's no cosmetic options on the variations in the face or the body of the character you choose, which kind of lets the game down a bit on its RPG side, but it's worth noting that this does not affect anything throughout the game, and your character's going to be covered in armor, so his face features won't really matter. Once you've created your character, you'll pick a difficulty. You can either pick normal or veteran, and then you'll be heading into the game. After a quick story introduction, you'll be thrown straight into the meat of the game, the combat. You'll start fighting very simple monsters and just picking up random loot. These first few minutes of the game give you a good opportunity to play around with the many different weapon types, and it also gives you a good opportunity to figure out what kind of character you want to create. Do you want a big guy with a greatsword? Do you want a tank with a shield and a smaller axe? Do you want a spellslinger with a wand and a secondary spellbook? Or do you want something completely different? It's all there and you can choose whatever you want. When you first level up, you'll be asked to pick a class to further develop how you want your character to be. Each of these classes have their own passive abilities and active abilities. For my example here, I picked an Arcanist, which is basically a glass cannon mage type of class. Each class also has a skill tree which allows you to further customize your skills and abilities to your playstyle. When you reach level 10, you'll be asked to pick a second class. This class will contribute skills and abilities and buffs to your original class, meaning you'll create a mixture of the two. This allows you to even further customize how you want to play the game, and the game actually names each different variations on the classes. For example, my character was called a druid because he was a mixture of the shaman class and the arcanist class. I picked these two classes because I wanted to create sort of the ultimate mage character. This is a good example of how the systems in place actually allows you to create whatever kind of character you want to be. You're basically able to make whatever kind of character you have in your head, and this adds a great deal of personality and ownership to your specific character. It also attaches you to him, and it makes the game feel more personal. That is something that many RPGs and many story-based games only dream of achieving, and this game does it through the mechanics alone, which is actually really, really impressive. You get even further buffs and abilities throughout the devotion system and throughout the loot you get in the game. The devotion system is basically a system whereby you cleanse these shrines you find throughout the world, either by collecting certain items or fighting a bunch of monsters, and these give you certain abilities and even allow you to customize abilities you've already gotten. This is a system that adds even another layer of mechanical customization, and it's really good for the game, in the sense that it actually forces you to explore all the areas you go into, and it also gives you another long-term goal apart from the normal skill trees. Once you've gotten a hold of all the basic mechanics, you'll start to complete the campaign, which is incidentally what I'm gonna talk about now. Grim Dawn features a main campaign which is about 20 hours long, or at least that's what it took me to complete. It involves you traveling throughout the world, completing different quests, meeting many characters and exploring various types of terrain. The main story of the campaign is not much to write home about. I won't spoil it here, but I will say that I found the over-reliance on text logs and text-based exposition became incredibly dull at a very fast rate. Let's just say the story didn't manage to pique my interest, but I kept playing because of the mechanical complexity and my unhealthy addiction to the level up sound. All that being said, there's actually a really healthy variety in the environments that you visit throughout the campaign. Even though some monsters and assets are reused every now and then, I never lost my interest in exploring a new zone and finding the monsters that were there to block my path. During the campaign, you'll gain reputation with different factions. This gives you access to special items and quests at specific vendors and at specific strongholds. For the enemy factions, the more hated you become, the more bosses you actually get to fight. This is a really good system because it provides an additional long-term goal to get to these high-level reputation items and to complete these storylines, which actually gives you some story that is better than the campaign in my opinion, but that is something I won't spoil for you because if you want to play the game, I want you to experience that for yourself. One of the main challenges you'll face throughout the campaign are the main bosses. To be honest, I didn't really find any of them particularly interesting, and I didn't find any of them particularly boring. They all have fairly good mechanics and many of them weren't actually easy to take down. Sadly, on high difficulties, many of these bosses become gear checks in the worst ways. Basically, if you don't have enough of a certain kind of resistance, you will be demolished by some bosses. I'm kind of in two minds about this. On one hand, it kind of forces you to go out and actually play other parts of the game before continuing, which actually can be a good thing, but on the other hand, it's just rather frustrating to be at a challenge that you can't complete, not because you're not good enough or because you lack the skills or the reaction time, but because you simply don't have the right armor. To be fair, it is only a problem on the harder difficulties, but it is still a problem nonetheless. Besides that little rant, I don't have much more to say in the campaign, so yeah, let's leave it at that. So in conclusion, Grim Dawn is a very mechanically deep game with enjoyable gameplay. It's let down a bit by its less than interesting story and has a bit of trouble with boss balance on higher difficulty. That being said, the game has a ton of replayability and I never once regretted my purchase. If you are at all interested in the game, I will leave a few links to the various storefronts below. It will be different prices depending on where you live and where you actually buy it. If you enjoyed the video, I do have a like button, and if you really loved it, I also have a subscribe button. I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye!